Thank you to the friends from the Campaign Against State Repression for organizing this event today. Um, I think Prabir made a very important point about uh, the need to keep a focus on solidarity of the kind we are expressing today. But even as he was speaking, I was thinking about Kashmir and about how the act of solidarity itself, uh, how much under attack it is in Kashmir. In fact, some of you might know that one of the cases or one of the elements in the charge sheet against Irfan, the young journalist from Kashmir who we are here to speak about, is that he was providing aid to victims of the pellet blindings. This is not a coincidence that somebody is being charge sheeted under UAPA for an act of solidarity with a victim of blindings, because actually in Kashmir, all acts of solidarity have been criminalized. So if your neighbor's house is blown up because, or if a house in your neighborhood is blown up because some militants may or may not have taken shelter there and your house is blown up, your neighbors cannot collect chanda and say कि भाई इनका घर टूट गया इनको राहत देनी चाहिए. वो भी you're liable under UAPA there also. So when solidarity itself becomes criminalized, तो एक चीज होती है, but becomes is read as an act of terror, then really you're up against you're in a very difficult time. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about Irfan. He's a young journalist who used to write and report for a range of publications, TRT World, Deutsche Welle, Two Circles, quite a few. And he ran a very remarkable website called Vand. Vand in Kashmiri means winter. And it was devoted to long form writing. It was a very serious publication. So in all of these, if you were to look for clues as to what exactly he did in his journalism that could be construed as something that deserves to be brought under UAPA, you'd have a very difficult time. You would not be able to do so. What he did, what Irfan also did, was that he used to part-time work on various reports brought about by the JKCCS. And that also makes its way into his charge sheet, because he is accused of participating in the writing of this report, which came out in 2019, which was on the use of torture in Kashmir. Mind you, when the report came out in 2019, it's a public report. It was widely reported in the media. Nobody ever questioned the material in the report. There were no questions were asked of the report at that time. It was treated by the government the way it always treats what we call human rights reports, which is it was ignored, right? So, but a few years down the line, that same report can become the grounds for you to be liable under UAPA. So this is the first point I want to make, is that many of the people who are currently in prison, especially under UAPA, they are in prison because of a kind of retrospective rereading of what has happened in the past. आपने 5 साल पहले कुछ कहा है, जबकि वो it was not considered illegal or unlawful to hold that opinion or to produce that report. For example, the work of the JKCCS, which is who produced the torture report, it was not done. It was not an underground activity. It was done in the full glare of public opinion, media, everything. And if people had questions about them, those were public questions. But today we are in a situation when the state apparatus is able to draw a line back to something that you may have said or done in 2019 and hold you liable, say that in the present context it is to be construed as unlawful, so therefore we can charge you for that. तो ये तो इसमें कितना खतरा है आप समझ सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये तो फिर शब्दों के ऊपर है ना कि कौन सा शब्द आज अपशब्द माना जाएगा और जो लॉफुल था 4 साल पहले, 5 साल पहले, 10 साल पहले. तो एक तो ये बात थी. दूसरी बात है कि there was mention here about the media, and as you know, Kashmir has had quite a vibrant media scene, which is quite difficult to understand somehow, but it did have a vibrant media scene. So, धीरे धीरे that media scene has become totally quiet to the point where you can now say that Kashmir is that place from which no news comes except a few times a year. जबकि ट्यूलिप गार्डन इनॉग्रेट होता है, जबकि अमरनाथ यात्रा शुरू होती है, और जब लाखों की तादाद में टूरिस्ट आते हैं, यही 3 खबरें जो है ये कश्मीर से आती हैं. तो इस माहौल में जो काम someone like Irfan Mehraj was doing, these are people, these are individuals, these are journalists who have not accepted their silencing. They have continued, however difficult it is. They have continued to report, and it is their continued striving to not remain silenced, which is, I think, what they are being punished for. Many other young journalists in Kashmir actually left. They are scattered all over. Some are in Delhi, some are abroad, whatever, because it was not possible for them. But only a handful stayed on with a commitment to carry on doing what they are, and Irfan is certainly one of them. The other thing is that in a world where the mainstream media, and by the mainstream media, I would even include local newspapers, because some local newspapers can be seen as part of the mainstream media. They have completely abdicated. They have moved away. So, if you're a young journalist, how do you get information? How do you collate information? There is no institutional support in the media anymore. एक इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने के लिए या डेटा गैदर करने के लिए आपको कोई न्यूज़पेपर, मैगजीन अब तो सपोर्ट नहीं करेगा ना. सो a proximity between the freelance journalist and human rights groups is not extraordinary. So, for example, I imagine that even the work that Rupesh Singh, I don't know him personally, but even the work he does would come from that kind of place, So, that is again becomes suspicious in Irfan's case, that he is associated with a human rights group. Now, why should there be, unless there's a breach of professional ethic, of journalistic ethics or something like that, why should that be a problem? That somebody is both working part-time as copy editing or writing, helping write a report, and being a journalist. So what I'm trying to suggest is that there is a criminalization, and more than criminalization, there is a punishing, because ultimately, even under the law, it is not possible to criminalize these activities. So why do they apply the UAPA? Because 6 महीने के लिए तो आपको कोई सवाल नहीं पूछ रहे हैं, उसके बाद आप साल 2 साल, Irfan has already been there for close to 2 years, sorry. So the process, it does not need to be, it cannot be overstated. The process is the punishment. We know in the case of, for example, the Bhima Koregaon 16, the lengths that people spent in prison, 6 saal, 5 saal, 4 saal, 3 saal, you know, and that is the punishment. So I don't think that the charge sheet against Irfan, anybody is going to, that it will stand scrutiny, yeah, even in the current arrangement. But that is not the point, because he's already spent 2 years. Who knows? He may spend another few years, and he'd already have been punished for something that he did not do. For example, the charges against him for being complicit in providing aid to victims of pellet blindings, they're all based only on the evidence provided by anonymous protected witnesses. And again, we know how frequently this has shown up in all kinds of cases where these anonymous protected witnesses, based on their evidence, you are charged. The fact that it will not stand scrutiny in the court is almost a given, but it doesn't matter, as we know in the cases of many of the people arrested in the Delhi riots cases. So I wish I could be as hopeful as Prabir was in terms of asking for solidarity as a response to the crisis. The trouble is that in Kashmir, it is not even possible to show a gesture of solidarity without that gesture itself becoming somewhat criminalized. Obviously, there's no question we can't have a meeting like this in Srinagar, but I also suspect we can't have a meeting like this in Lucknow or in Bhopal or in Jaipur anymore. So I think that this meeting it's nothing, but it's a very precious nothing, because in a situation where such expressions of resistance have already been criminalized, I think it's more important now than ever to make those gestures, those of us who can still make them. I must congratulate Prabir, who has already done his, or at least done one stint in jail on this account, to come and make this gesture, and to all of you for coming. Thanks.